Hello. It's me again, and of course, I have another update regarding this Etsy bank verification requirement debacle that's been going on for almost a year now. I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the update. So, about 12 days ago, 13 days ago, I get an email from Etsy, as I normally do, stating that it's a reminder email stating that I need to verify my bank account. I've already been not suspended, but my funds have been suspended. So I can't receive funds from any sales I make. I can still sell. I just won't receive those monies until I verify my bank account. So it's telling me I have to verify my bank account in the next 14 days from the date of this email, or I won't be able to sell anymore. So I'll be fully suspended. My shop will be down. So I got this email stating, reminder, bank verification needed in 14 days to get paid. This was sent on November 1st of 2022, and it says, hi, and then it states my shop name as normal. And it says, as a reminder, you are no longer able to receive funds from your sales since your bank account wasn't verified within 30 days of receiving our first request. To start getting paid again, verify your bank account in the next 14 days. This helps us keep our community safe, reduce the risk of fraud, and meeting evolving legal requirements. If you can't verify your account, we'll have to suspend your shop until your account is verified. And then here's how. I've received a few of these emails. It's same old. Now, this tells me it was sent on November 1st, and it tells me I have 14 days. So that means my account or my shop would have been fully down, fully suspended by mid-November. That is the hot spot for sales for small business owners, for the small shops that are on Etsy. Now, again, keep that date in mind, November 1st. Shortly thereafter, I get another email from Etsy. This one, not as personable. This one's subject line is different from the others, and it says, important. Bank verification deadline extended until January 2023. And this email was sent November 4th, 2022. So about 3 days after the first one. All of a sudden, I get this email that says there's an extension. And as I said, it's less personal than the last one. And it says, hi there. We recently reached out and asked you to verify your bank account to continue receiving funds from Etsy. We know the holiday season can be a busy and important time for your business, so we've extended the deadline to give you more time to verify your information. In August, we announced that we were requiring all sellers in the United States to verify their bank details to keep our community safe, reduce the risk of fraud, and help Etsy meet evolving legal requirements. That sounds familiar. We recommend that you verify your info as soon as you can, but you now have until January. You can see how many days you have left to verify your details by heading over to your shop manager. In January, we'll start pausing deposits for shops that have not verified their bank details. If you don't verify your bank account by the deadline in your shop manager, you'll no longer be able to receive funds from Etsy. If you have a few minutes today, you can verify your info now and take this off your to-do list for the new year. Here's how to verify your info. And then gives the same old, how to verify your info. Then ending with, thanks for being part of our community, Etsy. So first I was told that I had to verify my bank account this year, and Etsy sent several emails stating so. And now they have extended it in January. And again, this email was sent November 4th. So what happened? Nothing good happened between that time. So I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. But for Etsy, that's a negative. That's a no-go. The way they've handled this seems extremely insidious, and that's how I'm going to think that the executives or the decision makers considered rolling out this evolving legal requirements adjustment that they made to Etsy. We all know, any small business person knows, you don't even have to be a business person to know that the go time to make money for small business, the make or break, is basically the months of October and November, around that time frame. Because especially for businesses on Etsy, we're makers. Or most of us are makers. We make what we sell. I shouldn't say most of us, but many of us actually make what we sell. That's how Etsy advertises its website. That's what they like to put out there in their marketing, is that it's essentially where makers sell their goods. Um, so that is the make or break time, because sellers or shop managers need time to create what's being requested in the months of October and November, and then ship it out in early December for it to make it to their destinations in time for Christmas. So the make or break months are typically October, November, depending on what the seller sells. So by telling sellers that the deadline was mid-November, which is the absolute crux, uh, November is I would say, the latest. Some sellers can accept sales to make it in time for Christmas, depending on what they make, or excuse me, for the holidays, and depending on what they make in late, to make it delivery in late December, because the shipping times in late December become extremely delayed because of weather, because of the massive numbers of packages for delivery agencies. So making the deadline mid-November had to be a plan by executives. There's no way that's just happenstance. I do not believe that was just happenstance. I think they tried to use that deadline, that time frame, to push as many sellers as possible to verify their bank accounts. And I'm not as vain to think that it was my small videos. I only recently opened up. Well, I only actually started making videos rather recently, so I'm not even monetized. So I'm a very small YouTube account or YouTube creator. So I'm not as vain to think that my videos made any difference or had any impact. But I do believe the numerous number of YouTubers and the number of sellers that were leaving and jumping ship from Etsy may have had an impact on Etsy to cause this extension. Um, Also, Etsy had I guess, a quarterly earnings report period, I think in October, late October, in that time frame. Their stocks have been kind of hard to read. They were going down for some time, and now they're slightly up again. So it's hard to read whether or not this has impacted their stocks, because, as I stated in my other videos, this is all money motivated. Etsy has lost their warm and fuzzies a long time ago. They're not a good place for sellers. It's just a place for sellers. But it does not give any warm and fuzzy to any of the users, any of the sellers, buyers. It's all about the money. And if this bank verification situation was causing sellers to jump ship, causing bad press for Etsy, causing some type of negative impact on stocks, and shareholders would be outraged, then yes, then Etsy would have to make a change. But this is after the quarterly earnings. So this is rather odd that all of a sudden that they're pushing it to January. Trying to think like a businessman, because there's no way that Etsy doesn't have a board that has multiple executives with multiple degrees in in varying fields. As a business person, I do believe, or excuse me, trying to use my degree skills here, but I do believe that this was planned out all along. To get as many people verified in a very short period of time, by telling them that the deadline was November 15th or mid-November, right before the holidays, kind of almost like a veiled threat to sellers. Hey, you need to verify your bank account, otherwise we're going to shut you down, type of thing, coming off of COVID, which impacted a lot of small businesses. I do think this was rather strategized to get as many people to just comply with this veiled threat. And it's unfortunate to just suddenly push it to January, which is a very odd move, especially in such a short period of time. I do not believe that it was because of any act of Congress or any changes in this evolving legal requirements that they claim to be trying to comply with. I think they already knew when they needed to comply with it. I just think this was it's very suspicious. I mean, my gears are turning as I'm speaking right now. That perhaps they had to meet a certain requirement or percentage of their sellers complying with this by a certain deadline for the company, for Etsy. Um, it's all very suspicious. It's very strange that all of a sudden this evolving legal requirement they can just push back to January, because it should have just been January all along. Personally, I do believe that regardless of anything, the deadline should have been January all along, which unfortunately my spidey senses are tingling a little bit, and I have even less faith in Etsy that maybe somebody, maybe, because again, money is money, and it's the ultimate motivator, that maybe somebody with the financial technology company that you have to verify your account, your bank account with, um, maybe there was something involved with that, because these later months in the year are a great time to potentially steal people's identity, um, to take or get a hold of people's information, bank account information, which that third party company was sued for. So, I mean, it there could have been some handshakes under the table. I know I'm going off into conspiracy theory world, but I mean it's the only thing that can make this make sense. Because when Etsy rolled this out, and I believe early this year, late last year, the deadline always should have been January 2023. There was no reason to tell small business creators that they had to get their bank information verified through this shady company in such a short period of time and during the holiday rush. That just doesn't make sense. So it always should have been January. Any business person who actually could forecast, looked at their situation, would have just said, make it January, unless they were motivated by money, unless there were some other shenaniganery going on. Because it makes absolutely no sense why Etsy would try to force sellers or cause a panic for sellers to just get verified right before the holidays, right before the rush, the threat of them not being able to get a hold of those funds. Because Etsy does hold on to your money for a while, for several days before they give it up. So if you did make up a multitude of sales heading up to that deadline, and then your account suspended or your shop suspended, there's no guarantee that you would have ever gotten that money out in time. So, and some sellers do sell some high priced items on Etsy, so that could have been a lot of money. So that's a lot of pressure to just hand over your bank account information to this very unpleasant, shady third party company. And speaking of that company, a lovely commenter did leave a comment on my older videos stating that the business name is Plaid, pronounced like the, I guess, fabric design. So it's Plaid. I kind of like calling them Plaid, but if it's pronounced Plaid, then that's what they are. So a lot of sellers are fighting back against giving their information to Plaid. Speaking of sellers fighting against this bank verification debacle, I did find this article that was written in September, late September, September 25th, 2022, by Billy, forgive me on the name, Anania. And this is from Hyperallergic. So it's a rather interesting article. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into it because I don't want this video to be 11 years long. So Etsy sellers demand reversal of train wreck policy. The company is asking users to verify their bank details via Plaid, a fintech company that recently settled a privacy class action lawsuit. Selling on Etsy is becoming increasingly complicated as the platform grows. Additional fees, advertising requirements, and competition with resellers have left many artists and designers unsure of their financial security. Now, the online marketplace is requiring all sellers in the United States to verify their bank account information with Plaid, a financial technology company that recently settled a class action lawsuit after Venmo users accused it of selling their data. And again, if you saw my other videos, it's actually more than Venmo. They were hitting some pretty large scale accounts. I can't recall all of them, but Venmo was one of their larger ones. But it was several apps that ended up being involved with this, not just Venmo. So they acquired a lot of data from a lot of people. Moving on. Since late August, Etsy sellers across the company have claimed that Plaid, old habits die hard, claimed that Plaid verification process feels like an invasion of privacy. primarily the requirement that users must enter their online banking username and password. The Indie Sellers the Indie Sellers Guild, a new union that organized a week-long Etsy strike in April, is now advocating for an end to the Plaid partnership. I always pause on Plaid now. But that's interesting. I've never heard of this guild. The Indie Sellers Guild. I wonder if that had anything to do with this extension. Moving on. Etsy sellers aren't okay with being forced to share our private financial data with a third-party service in order to keep our shops open. Ooh, reading hard. The Guild wrote in a press release. It's one thing for sellers to freely choose to use a service like Plaid, to consider the security risk and loss of privacy, and decide that it's worth it. It's another thing entirely to be forced to give up your privacy rights and sign up for a service that we do not want in order to keep getting paid. Yeah, wow, they're better at telling me my feelings than I am. Since April, the Guild has recruited more than 2,600 of Etsy's 4 million sellers. The company listed upwards of 96 million users in late 2021. Now note the changes in terminology here. So 2,600 of Etsy's 4 million sellers. So there are 4 million sellers, 96 million users, which could also be sellers and buyers and people who just create accounts and never use it. So that's a very big difference. So always pay attention to terminology. So they recruited only a small fraction. I mean, less than 3,000 out of 4 million sellers combined with, 96 million users. All right. They received more than 86,000 signatures on a strike petition. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's pretty good. And published a second petition after the Plaid news. Oof. So let's think of our timeline here. I think I forget when the Plaid settlement came to be, but I think that was sometime in like February, maybe even, So it had to be around this. Yeah, they should have had the Plaid news. Because I could have sworn Etsy was pushing Plaid verification in early 2022. But they didn't go hard until August. I think that's what it was. I think they really started pushing hard in August, but I think this could have been coming down the pipes before then. But yeah, because I wasn't paying attention at the time, but I don't recall actually catching wind of this requirement until around August. So okay, that makes sense. So Plaid settles their multiple lawsuits in, let's say, February 2022. Etsy then starts pushing this requirement. So, but I'm still confused with the petitions. So they've been doing this since April. I'm just thinking out loud at this point. It's just weird. The timeline's weird with this because I could have sworn we knew that Plaid was getting sued before Etsy made this a requirement. This might be something to do to straighten out this timeline. All right, so they're doing a second petition. Interim President Christy Cassidy, a Rhode Island-based clothing designer whose Arlen shop, sorry, Christy, has been on the platform since 2006, told Hyperallergic that her business is starting to feel unsustainable. Quote, "The company had to know that we were not going to be happy about this," she said. "This is leading people to doubt that Etsy has their best interests in mind." End quote. And she is 100% correct. I do not believe that Etsy has sellers' best interests in mind. I believe they have shareholders' best interests in mind, which equates to money. They have money best interests in mind. Cassidy claims that Plaid partnership reflects Etsy's waning regard for independent artists, which dates back to its first fee increase in 2018. Yeah, I remember that. Since then, she notes, the company has given search priority to sellers who offer free shipping, mandated advertising fees for anyone making at least $10,000 per year, and launched a since-revised star seller program that disproportionately rewards resellers of already made items, all of which imposes challenges on anyone making handmade goods and custom listings. That is extremely problematic because what's going to happen is you're going to get those large resellers from eBay who just sell manufactured cheap items. Not cheap, I shouldn't say cheap, but manufactured items, the already made items from eBay. Those, and they do be, some of those companies are very massive. You're going to get a lot of those on Etsy, and it's going to be hard to distinguish eBay from Etsy, especially with their business practices as well. So basically, like I said before, Etsy's becoming the new eBay. It's becoming tarnished and corrupted, just like eBay has become. Just all about the shareholders, all about that money, making that paper, and losing a sense of community, a sense of the warm and fuzzies that we once had, which were for independent artists and people who create. Um, Now it's just becoming another eBay, which is very unfortunate. It's hard trying to do your own thing, Cassidy lamented. None of us have the power of a gigantic, oh, wow, again, reading hard, I'm just inputting my own words here. None of us have the power of a giant company like Etsy to dominate Google searches. In response to hypoallergics, wow. In response to allergics request for comment, Etsy spokesperson said, quote, as part of our efforts to protect our users, reduce the risk of fraud and account takeover, and to meet evolving legal requirements, Etsy is working to verify bank accounts. This is best practice across many industries, including other e-commerce marketplaces. Sellers are able to have their accounts verified instantly, or if they prefer, use a micro deposit based account linking option that does not require sharing account credentials, unquote. That is incorrect, as well as being a very canned response. That is a very PR friendly, almost automated response to this situation. It's just regurgitating the same thing that we read in the emails and in the privacy the privacy statement. Basically the stuff that you find in terms of services. It's not a human response. It's a very safe response, and I'm not very surprised. But if you're trying to combat, or if Etsy's trying to combat the fact that they're becoming more corporate and less warm and fuzzy, that response did not help things. As far as them stating that you could do micro deposit based account linking option without sharing account credentials, that is false. If I have to give a third-party company my routing and bank account information, i.e. numbers, then I'm sharing my account credentials. So this is a false statement on this person's part, because as far as I'm aware, those were the only two options with Etsy through this bank verification situation with Plaid. Either you have to give Plaid your username and password and log into your bank account to verify your bank information, or you have to provide Plaid your routing and or savings or checking account number and verify your account that way. It's a slower process. I think they called it the manual option, or the manual verification, but you still have to provide Plaid with your account credentials. So that statement from this Etsy spokesperson, who they did not name in this article, that is incorrect in my opinion. I believe that is a false statement. Moving on, since at least 2018, Plaid has been accused of posing as various bank institutions on money apps like Venmo and Robinhood to collect and sell users' data. The company denies all wrongdoing. However, it opted for a $58 million settlement for the lawsuit last year. In a statement sent to Hyperallergic, a Plaid spokesperson expressed their commitment to transparency on all data usage. That wasn't the only lawsuit that they had recently. So I like how they said since 2018, because I believe there were at least two lawsuits since 2018, and the largest one was the $58 million settlement. I believe, who was it? TD Bank ended up suing them for mimicking their account or mimicking their bank website. Again, an act that I believe should have resulted in somebody going to jail, but okay. The claims raised in the lawsuit do not reflect our practices, the spokesperson says, as you would expect. We do not, nor have we ever sold data. We make our role and practices clear and provide services that give customers control over how and where they share their data. End quote. Now, as far as that statement goes, when they say they make it clear, they do put it in their end user policy statement, as I've read in my first video, and it's still a load of hot garbage. Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of sellers still don't realize how much information or data they're handing over to this third-party fintech company. But I mean, at least they're putting it somewhere in their privacy statements, right? So at least now they're not stealing it. They're doing it just out in the open. It's amazing. Moving on. The fintech's auth product, okay, or authorized product, I'm assuming that's what that means. I have no idea what auth product is. An app programming interface adopted by Etsy increases the speed and security of payouts for US sellers. Well, security for who and in what terms? Allowing for instantaneous money transfers and minimal room for error when users enter their account and routing numbers. That looks like bank account credentials to me, Mr. Spokesperson, for Etsy, but okay. Etsy site states that the service helps payment prevent money laundering fraud, citing a manual solution for sellers who opt out. So that was the manual solution. They call it the manual solution for providing Plaid with your bank account routing and account number, which is still providing a third-party company with your bank credentials. So that spokesperson statement is out of line and probably should be revised. I think they should actually state something on that was inaccurate, because how are your routing and bank account information not banking credentials? Anywho, at the same time, Etsy sellers are struggling with account verification through Plaid. Some received emails claiming their information could not be verified, only to receive a follow-up email stating otherwise. Etsy did not immediately respond to Hyperallergic's multiple requests for comment. But the Plaid spokesperson stated that any frustration over the partnership is a misunderstanding. No, it sounds like you didn't get your act together and you're sending out conflicting information via email to sellers. Because, again, going back to some of the comments I received on my first videos, people were saying that they had errors, they couldn't get verified, and so on and so forth. So that's not a misunderstanding. That's just an F up. But okay. I love these spokespeople. We are committed to providing a secure experience for anyone using Plaid to safely and easily connect their financial accounts to the apps and services they want to use, they continued. We welcome anyone with questions or concerns to contact our support team directly. No, you don't. Trust and believe, you don't. Neither does Etsy. They will give you canned responses just like the ones seen in this article. So that's that. This does not make Etsy look good in any sort of way. If you haven't lost your warm and fuzzy yet, then this probably put you over the top. Yeah, guard your information, guard yourselves. Go ahead and make your paper. I've seen some other comments in my on my other videos about people not wanting to continue with Etsy, about using their own websites and so on and so forth. Look, I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from opening up an Etsy shop or continuing with their Etsy shop. I'm just saying you need to be informed if you're going to move forward with Etsy. You should be aware of what's going on. You should know what you're signing up for if you verify your bank account via Plaid, and you should guard yourself. I would strongly suggest, if you want to continue with Etsy, just open up another bank account, where it's a standalone bank account or maybe a free savings account, and providing that data to Etsy or to Plaid to be verified. Don't use an account that you have loans or credit cards or you share with somebody, where Plaid, as I read in my other video, could possibly get a hold of that bank account information or those financial credentials. Because clearly, reading what Plaid was accused of, some of the things that Plaid did, which I mean, if you have a whole bank, I believe it was in the top 10 banks of the United States, uh, accusing you of such an egregious act, there had to be, you know, some type of evidence. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and then they settled that one. I would love to get my hands on that documentation. So clearly, this company isn't as prestigious as Etsy likes to make it out to be. And that was just the other settlement that wasn't, or the other lawsuit that wasn't covered in this article. So there were multiple settlements here, or I shouldn't say settlements, or agreements that came to multiple lawsuits against Plaid for shady shenaniganery. So I do encourage sellers to just guard yourselves and keep an eye on your financial statements to make sure. And if you do use the expedited bank verification option, which is to give them your username and password, after doing so, change your password as soon as possible. And you should be periodically changing your password anyway, every few months. I forget what the actual number is. It's like every 6 months or so. But this is a nightmare for a lot of small business owners, is to have your information stolen, and just to have Etsy, which is people's full-time job. For a lot of people, it's their full-time job. Just to have this company force you to turn over uh, sensitive information to this very shady third-party company for this uh, evolving legal requirement is absolutely ridiculous. This is a very bad look for Etsy. I'm very curious to see what else shakes out. More than likely, January will be the true deadline because it's after the holidays. And like I said before, I have no idea why it was never the original deadline. Um, Other than to just force more sellers to just hop on board and be compliant with this change, and not say anything about it, as to not upset shareholders or as to not upset their stocks. Um, and actually, that's kind of what I think it was. Now that I think about it, I think it was to get sellers to comply before the holidays so that they would sell even harder to make it worth it. Um, and to drive more monies to the site, as well as get this ugly business, because it's very ugly. This is a very ugly business, to get it out of the way, to get sellers to overlook it, to focus on the holidays and making those sales. Um, I believe this was strategic. Regardless of the motivation, I believe it was very strategic. And the more I think about it, the more I think that's possibly what it was. It was to get sellers to just comply and to focus on making holiday sales and not focus on why is this company um, being sued twice in such a short period of time, accused of some pretty egregious acts, and why would Etsy agree to do business with them or have us verify our bank accounts through Plaid, which does not have a great track record. And I think that's what the strategy was on Etsy's part, was to just get sellers to overlook it, just comply, and focus on the holiday sales. And since a lot of sellers didn't do that, they then had to backtrack and figure out how to get themselves out of that hole, especially being so close to quarterly earnings statement deadlines, which I believe was in late October. So another video for me. Those are my thoughts. Don't forget, like I said, I am a rather new YouTube channel. I'm a rather new YouTuber. I hope to increase the quality of my videos in the future. Please like and subscribe. I am not monetized right now. I would love to become monetized. So if you guys could just help me with that, that'd be great. Don't forget to comment your thoughts on this whole Etsy bank verification debacle, and if it's just Etsy trying to keep on doing business because of the evolving legal requirements, or if this was something a bit more strategic. Thanks.